What's good in the YouTube? This is Crazy 71 here bringing another video. Today I'm bringing a video on Uchuu Sentai Kyuranger episode 15. This episode is called The Saviors of the Ocean Planet Vela. Now this episode is pretty cool for several reasons. First of all, it does actually expand on the main story, which is great. On top of that, we do get a focus on a character which we really haven't gotten much focus on at all, which is Hammy. Hammy does get actual focus for this episode. Pretty much every other character has gotten some focus. She's the only one that we have pretty much the least information about in the entire series so far. So 15 episodes in, we finally get something that gives us a little bit about her. It isn't just, oh yeah, she has like certain abilities or whatever. We get to see some origin to her, which is great. So that ends up happening. On top of that, there is some story regarding Scorpio and Stinger, which is cool, and we'll talk more about that towards the end and also towards the middle area, I believe, of this. So anyway, the episode basically starts with them, talking about how they want to go and find, they want to figure out where, where one of the Kyotama that they need for Argo is. So they end up realizing that the two Kyotama are located, the Vela Kyotama is located in the Vela system, and the Karina Kyotama is located in the Karina system. Thing is that they want to choose the Vela one because the Vela is located on a beach. They think, oh great, we'll go surfing, we'll go swimming, we'll have the best time ever. And so they even bring all sorts of pool stuff, and Hammy's the one that decides that's where they'll go. So at that point, this is the first episode in I believe 11 episodes since we've seen them go somewhere other than Earth. Yes, pretty much every other episode has been at least half of the team or part of the team going to Earth at some point in the episode. This episode, they still go to Earth, but it's not the team that's focused on as much. Technically, Stinger and Champ are on Earth, but the main team that's focused here goes to the Vela system. So they end up traveling to the Vela system, and there, when they expect to go surfing and having a good time and all that, in between when they get the Kyotama, they end up finding out that the water is gross and polluted and nasty, and they don't want to go swimming in it because it's not healthy and good for them. Meantime, they end up searching around to try to figure out where the Kyotama is, and we end up seeing this girl who is spying on a Magistrate, who is just kind of relaxing in the lap of luxury. Eventually, what ends up happening, though, is that they end up trying to fight this Magistrate, whose name is Goonzi. Magistrate Goonzi, which is an interesting Magistrate, has a very interesting kind of design. So what happens is that they end up fighting him, and eventually he does end up escaping. But what ends up happening is that Spada and Raptor end up going after him. Forgot to mention which team is in this episode. Lucky, Hammy, Spada, Raptor, and Nagare. Yes, all 5 of those members are chosen. So interesting team. Obviously, Raptor hasn't been in an episode recently, so that's cool. And just kind of cool episode. So what ends up happening, and for once, Hammy actually gets focus. She's picked fairly often, but she doesn't always get like real focus. She usually gets like a minute or two of focus. Anyway, so then what happens is that those two end up going after the Magistrate, and they end up actually discovering that he's located at the bottom of the sea. So what ends up happening is that we end up seeing the girl before, who ends up going back to her village. And the thing is that I forgot to mention that initially the reason why the Kyurangers attacked was because the Dark Matter was attacking. The Dark Matter saw the girl and was going to attack her. So the thing is that eventually she returns back to her village, and eventually the Kyurangers go to where the villagers are located. And the girl tries to talk to the villagers, but she's very shy and isn't someone that's so easy to open up to everyone. So because of this, even though she wants to help her village, she is too shy to tell them the truth about anything, even if she knows something that might be important or something that could change how they look at things. So because of this small factor, she struggles to come across a certain way to them. Eventually, what happens is that the Kyurangers show up, and well, actually, hard to mention this. We end up seeing their savior. So their savior is kind of not a savior. It really is just the mouse, right, Goonzi. And Goonzi is using the top of his hat piece to look like a savior being, which actually looks like, Nessie, if you know what I'm talking about, like that creature, like the Loch Ness monster or whatever. And so what happens is that they Nessie, not Loch Ness monster. What am I saying? So what ends up happening is that they end up giving the creature sacrifices when really it's just Goonzi, and the idea is that he has been saying that in order for them to get food and fish and do well and deal with pollution and all that, you must offer food and other means to Goonzi, basically, but their savior. So what happens is that they end up asking, is that Goonzi asked for Martha to be sacrificed, this girl. That's her name. And the thing is that she wants to escape, but the Kyurangers try to protect her. At the same time, they are actually looking for, obviously, the Vela, which they actually see. In the meantime, though, for some reason, Nagare also is put into a position where he ends up praising the savior, even though he shouldn't be so susceptible to his emotions and all that. But for some reason, he's pretty susceptible to, joining them. So what happens is that Naga ends up telling the villagers that the Kyurangers are looking for the Vela. And the thing is that they say that it's been something in their village for generations, and so they feel like you must be our villains, and so they want to attack them. At the same time, they want to sacrifice Martha to their savior, because apparently the weather isn't acting properly, and that really is just Goonzi creating problems. So what happens is that they try to go after her, but eventually the Kyurangers, I believe it's Hammy and Lucky, go to talk to Martha. At the same time, we end up seeing Spada and Nagare, who are also there. Not Spada and Nagare. Spada and Raptor, who return and tell about how there's like some tower underneath the water and all that. And Martha ends up explaining how this tower ended up coming in a while ago and how the water got polluted around that time. And because of that, there was very little fish. And due to that factor, the people have been believing that the savior is the one that will give them back their fish and make the water good again. But the thing is that Martha has a hard time telling them this kind of stuff, and eventually what happens is that Martha ends up running away from them, and then Hammy ends up going after Martha to talk to her. But in the meantime, we end up then seeing back on the Orion a conversation occurring with Garu, Balance, and Show, and they're talking about what must be going on with Stinger. So we end up seeing Stinger and Champ and how they're getting along, and we end up seeing that the former minister, I guess, must have been destroyed, and apparently Dark Matter often chooses to put their lead members in charge of different ministers. Now, obviously, there's malices. Ministers are basically like of a similar beings, but in this case, Scorpio was put in charge as a minister. So what happens is that they're looking for him, looking for Scorpio, And he's, obviously Stingler's kind of curious as to what must Scorpio have been up to. So in the meantime, what ends up happening is that we see Hammy talking to Martha about how she feels like Martha's a lot like her, only younger. And she explains how when she was on her planet, she, was shy as well. She trained as a shinobi and all that. And the thing was is that she wouldn't interact with the other kids when they trained. Instead, she would just do things on her own. And when her master tried to talk to her, she just really wouldn't speak that much. Eventually, though, when the Endeavors did show up with dark matter and all that, she spotted them by chance, and rather than, being shy and quiet, she chose to get the confidence to speak to her master and tell him that dark matter has appeared. And because of this, apparently, this allowed them to anticipate their attack and allowed them to escape their planet in time so that they would not be taken captive or killed. So that's pretty interesting. And so obviously in this sense it's similar, because it's like, if Martha can tell her villagers this, they'll actually believe her, and then they can be in a better position rather than with the position that they're in right now. So because of this, what ends up happening is that Martha doesn't understand it. Eventually Hammy, Lucky end up putting on some cloaks and appearing before the villagers. And the thing is that the villagers have been looking for Martha but haven't been able to find her. When they show up this time, Hammy and Lucky, they have Martha and they're willing to sacrifice her, although in this case they're really saying that they're going to protect her no matter what. So at that point the savior does appear. And the thing that I forgot to mention also is that at the same time Nagare says he'll sacrifice himself, and the thing is that he doesn't, which is funny, but it's weird. So anyway, what ends up happening is that Martha at first tries to tell her people what's happening, because the savior says, "Do you have any last words before I take you out?" And the thing is that she's about to say something to her people, and they're willing to listen. They're actually willing to, because she rarely speaks. So if she says something, it must be true, because it's very, very unusual for her to ever speak. And that's kind of the idea, is that the shy ones kind of like, you see a little bit more value in them because they don't speak that much. So in this case, what ends up happening is that at first she struggles to. Hammy then says, I believe in you, you can do this, and tries to build up her confidence again. And Martha finally explains that the savior is dark matter, and that they're the ones that have been causing the pollution. At that point, the villagers believe her, and suddenly we end up seeing Raptor using, I believe it's telescopium Kyotama to shoot from a distance in Endeavor. On top of that, which that Endeavor is creating a projection that allows for the headpiece of Goonzi to appear large and look like some creature that's like their savior. At the same time, they end up realizing that yes, it can't be. And so then at that point we end up seeing Spada, who ends up using the Valen Kyotama, which allows him to shoot up into the air and knock Goonzi out of the water onto land, and that's when they end up seeing what Goonzi is. At that point they realize that Goonzi is the villain. He has been causing the trouble this whole time. So then at that point the Kyurangers decide to transform and fight Goonzi. Eventually what happens is that they then end up getting to form Kurano, and this time Kurano has it where it's obviously red, and then as far as arms go, it's I believe it's yellow and pink are the arms, and green and silver are the legs. So then what ends up happening is that they end up fighting, and Goonzi struggles because he's in the water and all that, but eventually they do end up destroying Goonzi, and the villagers are happy and feel good about themselves, and eventually we end up seeing them, say thank you to the Kyurangers, and Martha especially is very grateful and offers up the Vela Kyotama because she feels like, they saved them and all that, and they deserve it. So at that point what ends up happening is that is that now they have the Vela Kyotama, which means that they have 2 out of 3 Kyotama that they need. So they still need the Serena or the Karena Kyotama, which they'll probably get in a couple of episodes or so, I'm sure. So then at that point, this leads to us seeing what's going on more so with Stinger and Champ. And we end up seeing that Stinger and Champ enter into a building where they believe Scorpio might end up being. And they end up seeing this creature, which is the monster form of Scorpio. Thing is, Stinger doesn't know that it's Scorpio, and so doesn't Champ. So when they encounter him, they say, "Do you know of a Scorpio?" And the thing is, he's like, "Yes, I do." And at that point, Scorpio in his monster form ends up using his tail, and Scorpio and Stinger end up having this tail battle or whatever, and then Scorpio appears really close to Stinger, and at that point Stinger realizes, like he ends up saying, "Huh, don't you recognize this voice?" And at that point Stinger realizes Scorpio, and then he freaks out. He doesn't freak out, but he's like, "Oh my," you could tell it in a second that he's like, "Oh my god, what happened to him?" Yeah, so it's a bit of a freak out moment. As far as what episode 16 looks like, yes, the 16 is going to focus on them actually on Stinger confronting his brother for real and actually getting into a real battle with him, which is going to be cool. So that is going to go into some story about him, which is going to be super exciting, and I can't wait for that episode. But yeah, so overall, really cool episode. Can't wait to see how 16 looks, because that one looks really exciting. But overall, I really, really like this episode so far. I thought that this was a really cool episode. Liked seeing Hammy get actual focus for once. Even if it was a little more basic focus, still really cool. What did you guys think of this episode? Did you enjoy it? What did you think of Hammy's character, and also what did you think of the whole reveal for Stinger of seeing how his brother has changed now? Did you think that was pretty cool and pretty epic, or what? Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next video. So until then, guys, I'm Crazy Sarah 1, and goodbye, guys.